Our final storyteller for this section, we will have some more storytellers later, is a junior here at Olin College. Would you please help me welcome Antonio Perez?
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you for coming here to listen to me, as well as the other speakers up here on stage. But most importantly, thank you for keeping an open mind about what we have to say. Now, with that being said, I'd like to devote my time on this stage to addressing what we think we know about education today. And I'd like to start by sharing a couple of statistics. At Olin College, the institution that I attend, the average student has a 5% chance of dropping out. That's substantially lower than the 45% national average. But in the past 3 years, 2 of my 3 roommates have dropped out of college. That's almost a 70% dropout rate if you happen to be rooming with me. But which kind of questions my credibility as a person. But I don't think I'm that kind of roommate. Because I do keep my socks off the floor. And I do keep my toolbox neatly stashed away. And whenever my roommate enters the room, I say, "Alexa, volume 3. But if Alexa isn't the one responsible for the eviction of my roommates, then who is? Why did they leave? And why is their departure so statistically aberrant from the standard rate of retention in higher education? I would love to hand over the mic to Alex and Ray right now, but the fact of the matter is, they're not here. And I can't speak their story for them, but I can voice mine, which coincidentally isn't all that far from theirs. Because just like me, Alex and Ray, they wrestled with the contradictions of being marginalized students in elite environments. And make no mistake, I applaud Olin for its recruitment of a Black bisexual man from Ohio and the low-income Latino from inner city Chicago, because it's admissions like these that expand the expectation of who belongs in an elite environment. But when the size of my graduating class is 80 students, when Alex leaves, we've got a 50% dropout rate in our Black community. It's the kind of issue that you'd think we'd all stop and pay attention to. But at a college known for never-ending projects, problem sets, and plans to change the world, it just seems like life goes on. So when you find yourself full swing into the semester, already sleeping 5 hours a night, this isn't really a thought you can afford to have, is it? But Alex, Ray, and I, and countless other students, we can't afford to not think about these issues because they continue to stare us down on a daily basis. And so in order to understand my difficulties in college and why I'm not the roommate from hell, I think it would be helpful to share where my story began. And where my story begins takes us right back to statistics. Did you know that the United States receives 1.3 million immigrants each year? Of those, 60% stay, 20% go on to have children in the American education system, of which only 25% receive bachelor's degree or higher. And to add the cherry on top, only 5% of those degrees are from Tier 1 schools. Statistically speaking, I don't think I'm supposed to be up here, or at Olin College, or even in Boston's elite education climate. But here I am. And part of the reason why is because of the values that my parents passed on to me. My father, he's a farmer from rural Mexico, and he didn't have the option of finishing high school because he needed to help his parents, my grandparents, on the farm. And well, I'll admit that there's a lot he doesn't know. Biology, geometry, or even the difference between a simile and metaphor. But I can assure you that my father, he knows how to get up to a 4 a.m. alarm. He knows how to work 17-hour workdays so that his son can pay for college. And he knows how to make a pretty decent guacamole. But most importantly, my father didn't need a degree to explain to me the term work effort, because his actions already spoke louder than any words ever could. So as you can see, Papa is really the one that gets me through the 17-hour problem sets. He's the one responsible for me even being in college in the first place. And Mama, she is no stranger to hard work either. She grew up as one of 6 daughters to a single mother in the outskirts of Mexico City. And just like Papa, she didn't have the option of finishing high school because she needed to make money. And it wasn't long after dropping out of high school that Mama immigrated to the United States and became a house cleaner. And that's where I come in. Starting from the age of 12, I'd help my mom mop the floors, clean the windows, make the beds, anything that the homeowners asked for. Because that's the kind of financial situation that my family was in. And so while my mom would be in one room vacuuming the carpets, I'd be right next door, sloshing her oversized mop against somebody else's tiled kitchen floor. And I'll admit that there is a humbling aspect to scrubbing somebody else's toilet for money. There are benefits. Because while I didn't realize it then, while I was scrubbing that stranger's toilet, while I was folding their laundry, I was also receiving the foundation that would inform my commitment to equity. Because I haven't forgotten the dizzying scent of chemical cleaning products in the air, or the insides of my fingernails caked with mysterious dirt. And it's through these experiences that I've been granted an enduring awareness for the people who are not considered so often, for the people who are not seen. And whether that be Alex the Ray or Jackie the custodian at Olin, or even the maintenance staff here at Paramount Theater, I learned from very early on that everybody matters, that everybody contributes to the world in their own way, whether we see it or not. And so now we know that there are people and that there's work that may not be necessarily visible in these communities of privilege. But what about people like Alex, like Ray, and like me who are invited from these margins? Simply by being here, we expose a different kind of blind spot. That for students like us, becoming part of an unfamiliar community, when we're students' parents probably don't clean for a living, can involve an incredible amount of exertion and effort. And we expend that effort at moments that might surprise you, moments that might seem effortless, even fun. Moments like when incoming students are asked to share the coolest fun facts about their endeavors. Things like golf competitions, professional dancing, cross-country hiking. My facts are not so fun. Let's see. I guess I couldn't afford karate lessons when I was a kid. I worked at home instead of traveling. And I never even considered playing an instrument, other than my recorder, of course. But don't let the fun facts fool you. They are doing serious work. They're finding footholds for people to work together. And while this sort of stuff is important everywhere, it's especially important at a place like Olin, right? Where student work is driven to be so team-based. And so Olin invites these student candidates to campus for a weekend so that they can get to know the community and that the community can get to know them. And getting invited to this prospective student weekend was one of the greatest academic achievements of my life. Attending this weekend was one of the most socially isolating. Because all those conversations going on around me, between parents and students, between professors and student candidates, they were those I couldn't really contribute to, right? So, and it wasn't for a lack of trying, right? But because I don't know what it's like to hike through Thailand. And I don't know what Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata sounds like. And I'm not a coffee connoisseur. And I'm definitely not fluent in cheese. But almost as soon as I'd lost hope, I noticed in my informational packet that I'd been paired with a current student host for dinner. And before I go any further, I'd like to mention that on that day there were about 100 student candidates and maybe 50 student hosts. So that put me at a 2% chance of having any demographic points in common with my student hosts. And I don't really believe in destiny, but when I met my host, Diego, that lack of faith wavered for a bit. And by the way, I work at the admission office, so I know that this pairing wasn't on purpose. Because what were the chances that I'd be paired with the one and only student in that entire dining hall who could have understood me then and there? A person who had also danced at quinceañeras, who had also brought lunch in a repurposed sour cream container, and who had also applied to the same college scholarships for low-income students. One would think we had done all these things side by side. And I still vividly remember that the first thing I said to him when I met him was I walked up to him, I leaned in, and I said this: "Don't you think we're a little out of place?" And while he agreed, Diego, he also set down a challenge. He said that if you think that there should be more people like us here, then come and fix it. Now, I'm a competitive guy, and Diego set up that challenge so smoothly that the following August, I found myself on a one-way bus trip to Needham, Massachusetts. And competitive as I am, I wouldn't say I was fully prepared to thrive in a competitive college environment. And partly that's because it's challenging when your peers already know what's being taught and what are supposed to be your introductory classes. It plants the thought in your head that maybe you don't belong, that maybe you're just not good enough. And that alone is a massive hurdle to overcome. But the work ethic that I learned from my parents can get me over those kinds of hurdles. And so far, it has. But there's a different kind of hurdle that's more difficult to overcome. The kind that you face, not because the concepts are difficult or unfamiliar, but because they're not consistent with the values that you hold closest. So my classmates and I were geographically placed within communities of affluence and privilege. So when we practice our design skills on the local community, we work on making custom walkers to revolutionize the art of grocery carrying, or building apps for dog owners to find sitters. Community problems in a demographic that's consistent with that of the majority student body. But not with me. Because unfortunately, these are not the dominant issues of my community, where instead, we struggle to speak English, we stand on welfare lines, and we think twice before going out at night. And so, my request for the future of education is plain, but not so simple. I believe that remaking education requires a challenging of our assumptions and focusing towards a system that is inclusive to all. A system where we acknowledge and discuss that members of teaching and learning communities have different values and face different challenges. A system where every father's hard work pays off, where every mother's work is visible and valued. One where the son of a farmer can find his place, and one where my roommates would want to stay. Thank you very much.